Pantheon was and remains to this day my favorite limited time mode that Bungie has ever released for Destiny. If you are not familiar, Pantheon is a gauntlet style raid event where you fought through between 4 and 8 of the witness's best friends. Now, I really liked Pantheon. However, it did have 2 glaring issues that I feel are lessons that Bungie have learned since they released it. They fixed a few of the issues from Pantheon within Rite of the Nine. Now, those 2 issues were accessibility and lack of unique rewards. On the accessibility side, they basically have a walkthrough mode of every single dungeon in Rite of the Nine. However, I don't think that that would actually apply to Pantheon. On the other hand, we had a complete lack of desirable rewards outside of just having something to put on the raid report. Now, the actual rewards themselves, you were able to get 4 serviceable emblems. They all did look good. And in addition to that, you had access to get all 5 of the raid exotics that you did not have before. That being 1,000 Voices, As Tomorrow, Collective Obligation, Touch of Malice, and Conditional Finality. But for most players, the raid exotics are pointless to get as a reward once you've already earned them in the first place, and the emblems are only earnable 1 time the first time that you complete any of these activities. Rite of the Nine gave us effectively what were brand new weapons, almost entirely unique roles that are inaccessible to this day, a reason to get on the game and grind for a short while to get dungeon weapons with hollow foils that you can take and use into the future. Now, admittedly, all of the weapons that were made during Raid the Nine have been power crept out of the game. That is because of the new tiering system. However, into the future, all new gear is going to be on the gear tier system, so I fear that we are not going to have to deal with any sort of weapon power creep again until we get Destiny 3, for example. And so I asked the question, what would a brand new Pantheon refresh look like in Destiny 2? Now, the lazy answer would be to just reuse the last Pantheon's encounters with brand new loot, similar to the way they did it in Rite of the Nine with some new emblems. However, I'm not lazy. Well, I am, but not when designing a hypothetical Pantheon encounter. So I'm giving Bungie the greatest layup of all time. I'm Dwayne Wade throwing it to LeBron right now with whatever dev at Bungie's watching this. And so here are my picks for the 8 encounters that I feel should go into a hypothetical Pantheon refresh with brand new mechanics to make it interesting. So sit back, relax, like, subscribe if you haven't already. Boom, call to action within the first 3 minutes of the video. My YouTube overlords would be oh so proud of me. And here are my picks for a Pantheon refresh. Just to get this out of the way, I'm not going to be reusing the original Pantheon schedule, whereas we got 4 encounters week 1, 1 encounters in week 2 and 3, and 2 encounters in week 4. I much prefer the idea of having 2 encounters per week for the entire event. This just feels a little bit more even because I already know what happened the last time Pantheon came around. Played week 1 a bunch, week 2 and 3 did not play that much, and I just waited until week 4 when all 8 encounters are in the game. So this time we're going 2, 2, 2, 2. Starting off with our first big bad, we have Morgeth, the Spired Keeper. This is going to be the first encounter for our Pantheon. Now, Morgeth is a relatively simple encounter. Now, we're not going to be changing this one too much. Normally, the Taken captains that spawn in the arena are the ones that drop the Taken Essence, which you can then use to cleanse your teammates of the Taken Enervation debuff whenever they are trapped in the Morgeth cage. But instead of Taken captains, this time there's going to be 2 subjugators, just like in the Witness fight, 1 strand, 1 stasis. And when you kill both of them, only then does the Eye of Riven, the Taken captain, spawn. Now, this entire time, your 2 teammates that need to be cleansed are still going to be trapped inside the Morgeth cage. To compensate for this, you're going to get a little bit more time because I don't think 20 seconds would be enough, personally, to kill 2 subjugators, wait for the Taken captain to spawn, and then kill the Taken captain. So this time, your players trapped inside the cages are going to have 30 seconds on their timer. That should give more than enough time to kill both subjugators, wait for the Taken captains to spawn, and then cleanse out your teammates who were trapped inside the Morgeth cages. And that's it. Like I said, the Morgeth fight is going to be remaining relatively unchanged. The only thing that I did decide to change was additional enemies that are going to spawn before you can unlock the ability to cleanse enemies from the cage, just because the Morgeth fight is not a short fight, but it is relatively uncomplicated, and you need something bigger and has more health to shoot at than just Morgeth, because it is a relatively simple fight. Even in its day, it was relatively simple. Compare this to something like Golgoroth in week 1 of the previous Pantheon. The only thing Golgoroth did compared to its regular self was inflict 2 guardians with unstable light at the same time and spawns in additional enemies for gaze holders to deal with. It's just relatively uncomplicated change and expansion to the core mechanics that doesn't intrude so drastically, but we're going to get a little bit more creative the further we go on. And boss number 2 for week 1 of the Pantheon. This is the capstone boss, quote unquote, of the week, and I chose Warpriest. I feel that Warpriest personally has fallen out of the GOAT discussions when it comes to raid encounters. Back in its day, Warpriest was competing for top 5 raid encounters of all time. Now, I don't even think it cracks the top 10 list. So what we're going to be doing is creating a modified rule set based on the challenge mode for Warpriest. Now, the challenge mode normally states that the same player cannot hold the brand of the initiate twice. If you pick up the brand 2 times in a row, you're just going to die. So you need to rotate your players just to make sure that nobody's picking up the brand twice. Now, I'm just going to be straight up ignoring the Destiny 2 version of the challenge where you have to transfer the brand of the initiate with the brand claimer buff within 2 seconds of picking up the brand claimer. I feel that there is way too much desync for that to be fun a second time. I completed King's Fall day 1. It was not fun then, and it would not be fun here. Without changing the Warpriest fight too drastically, my concept for a Pantheon version of the Warpriest is to do something unique with the Oculus. I would add a mechanic where the Oculus, after a certain amount of time during the damage phase, specifically calls out which player must go get the brand claimer debuff. Because normally what you can do is you can just have 2 players dedicated to swapping the brand back and forth. That usually leads to your best people at rotating with, their movement abilities being able to go get the brand claimer. What we're going to do is we're going to have a dedicated person. The Oculus is going to say, the Oculus chooses, I don't know, Joe Schmo. And Joe Schmo is then going to have to go get the brand claimer rather than be your dedicated player. And after all this, every single time you swap the brand of the initiate between the players, the Oculus is going to light up. And it's going to shine on a third of the arena at a time. Now, what I want to do is encourage players to move around while doing damage. So if you look on screen for your map right now, we're going to make the quadrants roughly based off of where the obelisks are spawned already. Now, the damage from the Oculus is going to be light enough where you can survive for a little bit. The way I imagine this would work is that as soon as the first brand of the initiate is claimed by the last player stepping on the plate, 2/3 of the arena is going to slowly become inaccessible, where you're only going to be taking like, 2 damage per second when you're standing in a place lit up by the Oculus. Not nearly as much to kill you, but it will kill you if you're standing in there for like 10 seconds or so. The reason why it's dealing low constant damage is that as soon as the brand is switched, you will be able to tell which part of the arena you need to go to next, and you're instantly going to start taking damage. So the entire team would then have to rotate from zone 1 to zone 3, for example, and then from zone 3 to zone 2. That would be the rotation. And then at the end of it all, the zone that you are standing at for final is going to be the one that the Oculus is going to break. So there's going to be no need to move after that. It's going to make your rotations a little bit harder. You're no longer going to be able to stand off the right side from the Warpriest and then immediately hop down to 3 and then to 2. And then if you are taking 4 full damage phases, you're going to have to take that trek to hop back up to 1. None of that's going to happen. Your players are going to have the opportunity to rotate fast and often. All right, so that was week 1 of Pantheon, Morgeth and the Warpriest. I think that the Morgeth changes wouldn't be too intrusive. The Warpriest changes would require a little bit more effort, which is why I'm hesitant to say that my idea of shining on 2/3 of the arena at a time is a little bit unrealistic. If anything, this could probably be done by saying, okay, well, this is your damage phase 1. You have a random quadrant of the arena that you have to go into and do all of your damage from. Or it could be something like, okay, the brand of the initiate has a larger radius, but you have to remain inside of the brand of the initiate while doing damage. Otherwise, the Oculus is going to constantly be shooting you. That was another idea I was toying with, but I decided to go with the 2/3 of the arena being lit at a time. I just thought it would work just a little bit better and would be less confusing for players rather than, hey, I'm standing over here. Why am I taking damage? But if I'm in the brand, I'm not taking damage. Week 2. Week 2 of Pantheon. Once again, we have 2 bosses, and we are going to start out with one of the least whelming boss fights in the entire game currently, the Templar. Now, the Templar suffers from Destiny 1 design syndrome. It was the first raid boss that we ever had the opportunity to encounter, and in Destiny 2, it really isn't much better. The Templar is super simple. I would argue and say it is the easiest raid boss in the entire game, but I digress. There are three main mechanics to Templar. Mechanic 1, breaking the shield. Mechanic 2, oracles, and mechanic 3, blocking the Templar from teleporting. Now, we as a community, by and large, have just ignored oracles this entire time. Templar has basically just been a DPS check, and how quick you can kill the Templar is going to determine how fast, you can actually complete the encounter. The biggest problem with the Oracle's mechanic in Templar is the fact that you have to leave and stop doing damage to go interact with them. Some would say that's a good thing. I think it's a little bit more annoying than not. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that you don't have to leave to be able to see the Oracles. What that means is that midway through the Templar boss fight, he is going to get his shield back, and the three oracles are going to spawn over his head in like a triangle formation. It's going to be very simple. To re-break the shield, what you're going to need to do is just kill the oracles. That's pretty much it. The oracles are going to show up twice like they do normally. You're going to be able to see the chime, and then the third time they spawn, when they are all available at the same time, the shield is going to go up, and that shield is going to remain there until you break the oracles. Since oracles are a relatively simple cook, I don't think this change is too intrusive. If you break the oracles in the wrong order, your damage phase is going to be over, or if you fail to break the oracles at all, obviously they're going to explode and you're going to need to cleanse in the pool. Now, addressing the teleport mechanic, I have a relatively simple fix, considering this still is Destiny 1 design syndrome. What I would do is the player holding the shield has to block the teleport. Yes, this is obvious. The only reason why this is the case is because the Templar is typically shooting a bunch of shots at the player, and you need the shield to block that damage. So what we're going to do is every time one teleport is blocked, the player holding the shield cannot block a second one. For example, as soon as the teleport is blocked, they're going to get the exhaust debuff applied to them, and another player needs to come over and take the shield from them and then run to the next location to block an additional Templar teleport. Now, with these two mechanics, shooting the Oracle to re-break the shield and players needing to swap the shield amongst each other to block the teleports, I feel it would make the Templar marginally more interesting than it already is, combined with an increased health pool and not being able to insta-kill him in basically 8 seconds at this point. I feel that this would be a good challenge for week 2, boss 1 of my version of the Pantheon. All right, up next, Crota, son of Oryx, is going to be my boss for week 2 of Pantheon. Now, Crota, fortunately, in his Destiny 2 form, has a lot more going for him than his Destiny 1 counterpart. However, for the sake of making this interesting, here's what we're going to do. Back in Destiny 1, you first would have to break Crota's shield with your weapons and then deal damage with the sword. In Destiny 2, this was changed so that you have to break the shield with the sword and then deal damage with your weapons. We're going to revert this change. We're going to go back to the Destiny 1 version of Crota, where you have to break the shield with your weapons and then deal damage with the sword. However, the trade-off here is that you are able to gather up to 6 swords at a time for DPS. So it is going to be a slow build-up into a big hackathon against Crota. To balance this out, we're going to change how the Oversoul mechanic works. Normally, you have to stop what you're doing, wait for the timer to get as close to 1 second as possible, and then go and shoot the Oversoul. What we are going to be doing this time is we're going to make Crota temporarily immune to damage, and all the players with swords are going to have to go run over to a randomly spawning orb on the map and break an orb with their swords, and this will then in turn break the Oversoul. And then after that, if you do kill the Oversoul in time, you're able to take your swords with the remainder of their lifespan and then go back to beating up on Crota. I always liked the fantasy of Destiny 1 where you had to kill Crota with his own weapon rather than just weaken him with his own weapon, because to me it makes sense at least that the weapons of the Guardian shouldn't be enough to kill a literal god, and instead you would need to use his own weapon to kill him. So that's why we are reverting the change and changing up the Oversoul a little bit. I think this would be really interesting. All right, that's it for week 2. Moving on to week 3, the first boss that we're going to be fighting is the Herald of Finality. Now, the only change we're going to be making for the Herald of Finality is going to be similar to the change that was made for the Macrocosm encounter for Root of Nightmares. If you don't remember, Macrocosm, all that happened was additional fire tornadoes spawned during DPS, and a Tormentor would spawn after you put all the planets in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a mechanic from the Witness, and we are going to apply it directly to the Herald of Finality encounter. What I mean by mechanic is we're going to take the mechanic from the DPS phase of the Witness, and we are going to apply it to the Herald of Finality's arena. The mechanic that revolves around you and your team moving back and forth around the platform depending on which way the Witness's hands go. The only exception is we are not going to do the jump phase because I think that that would be just a little bit silly. So on screen right now is a rough image of the Herald of Finality's arena. I am this generation's Leonardo da Vinci, as you can tell by this art. Basically what you want to think of is the Herald of Finality's arena is just a big square. There's nothing in the square, so we're going to break this square into you can call it 9 sections and or 3 sections depending on the way you are, but I think it's easier to break the arena up into a 3x3 grid, and then of that 3x3 grid, 6 of those squares are going to be triggered at any given time, and you have to jump around the arena playing hopscotch to avoid the Witness's wrath, which means you actually have to shoot the Herald of Finality instead of just going ham on him with swords 24/7, because I feel one of the biggest wasted opportunities with the Herald of Finality is that he has a very nice crit spot on his back that we can't take advantage of. This change, in theory, should force players to have to play around the fact that the arena is relatively large and use all the space to their advantage, rather than just throwing on swords or falling guillotine or whatever and just spamming left to right click and just going crazy for 30 or 45 seconds. Rather, you're going to want your players to move around the arena, use the space to your advantage, actually shoot the crit spot on the boss's back instead of just, spamming with swords. Now, I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about what an Atheon in Pantheon would look like. That's a tongue twister, say it twice. And what I was really going for without adding a new mechanic was just an extension of the existing mechanics of Atheon. Now, we could go something simple like we're going to add Shadow Atheons to the opposing realms, because I don't know if you remember, there was a glitch quite a while ago where you were able to just kill yourself and teleport into the Venus time stream while Atheon was waiting for you in between the Gatekeeper's encounter and the Atheon encounter, and you can just get Atheon to 1 HP and then, just start the encounter real quick and then kill him instantly. But I decided against that, and what I think I ended up going for is a little bit more interesting. So first and foremost, we have to break down a couple mechanics for Atheon. Starting off is Atheon as an enemy in the main room underneath the glass throne. What we're going to do is whenever Atheon is channeling the time stream, when he has players locked into either of the alternate dimensions, he isn't just going to be standing there with his hand up in the air, basically waiting for you to do the mechanics and then leave the alternating time streams. What instead Atheon is going to do is he's going to do a quick animation just to indicate that players are being pulled into the time streams, and then he's going to become an active enemy on the field again, so no more standing around just waiting for the enemies to come to you. We're going to make it so that all players in the overworld are subject to the Evading Darkness debuff, and the only way to cleanse themselves from this debuff is to stand on the plates to rebuild the portals to the different time streams. They could do this an infinite number of times. This is just so that the darkness debuff that we see isn't just a one and done thing once you actually leave the dimension and cleanse yourself with the shield. What we're also going to do is we're going to up the difficulty a little bit. So Oracles, normally you get the callouts when you're in the main dimension, and then in the alternate time streams you have to kill them. What we're going to do is we're going to do something similar to what we saw during the Desert Perpetual, where 3 players had to synchronize their actions to build plates. We're going to make it so that the outside Oracles and the inside Oracles have to be killed at the same time, which is going to mean that the outside Oracles are going to be shootable entities that you have to synchronize killing with the inside team. I feel like this isn't too crazy. It adds an additional mechanic for players to interact with, and it adds additional dangers in Atheon being an actual combatant for more than 45 seconds at the beginning of the encounter, and it makes so that players don't just hide in the back of the map or up on top while they're waiting for the inside players to finish Oracles. Instead, they have to cleanse their darkness by actually building the portals. So I think it'll make it a little bit more interesting for everybody involved, to get everybody active at the same time. And courtesy to Mr. Fruit here, because I'm just stealing all of his footage. Yes, I did ask him permission. Thank you very much. But for the 7th boss for my Pantheon, the first boss of week 4, I decided to refresh a raid and go with Calus. Now, originally, I had only wanted to make Pantheon encounters for raids that were in the game, but as I was looking at the mechanics for Sanctified Mind, I realized that even I couldn't save that with the hypothetical Pantheon refresh, so I decided to go with one of the Leviathan raids. And if we were going to be getting any raids back from the Destiny Content Vault, which, side note, I do believe we will get all of them back eventually, I think that having Pantheon showcase a new and revitalized Calus would be good. So, if you do not remember, Calus has two main mechanics. There's an inside team and there is an outside team. Now, what the inside team is trying to do is the inside team is giving out callouts to the outside team, who are then going to go around to plates and punch the corresponding scions to give the inside team more time and or a new platform to stand on, depending on whatever way you think about it. And the inside team, what they are doing is they're basically playing Duck Hunt, where they are calling out the symbols on Calus's forehead, feeding it to the outside team to give them callouts. They're shooting scions in the air, and at the very end, they're going to be shooting skulls. The more skulls you're going to be getting, the more damage you're going to be dealing to Calus whenever you're standing on the plates eventually. Calus was relatively easy as long as you had a good setup to destroy all of the skulls that were flying at you. You can deal a lot of damage to him. So here's where we're going to be changing. Instead of one symbol on Calus's forehead, there's going to be a rotation of symbols. So instead of just calling sun and then the person on the outside going to punch the sun scion, it's going to be something like, oh, this one is sun. Oh, and then the next one is sun axe. Then, oh, the next one is sun axe dog. Then, oh, the final one is sun axe dog cup. Something like that. Basically, for all four phases that you are inside, you're going to have to be punching or destroying a progressively larger amount of scions on the outside to give the inside team more time and the ability to survive. This, I feel, will create an incentive for more people on the outside team to be actively seeking out and destroying the scions on the platforms. Now, this proposed change is going to give the outside team a little bit more to do. Now we're going to give the inside team a little bit more to do. I feel that they personally don't have enough going on besides the shooting and the jumping and trying not to fall down into holes. So the only change I'm going to be making to the inside is that instead of just during the final burn, like you see on screen now, where you have to shoot skulls, is that there is going to be a progressive amount of skulls being shot from Calus. Basically, going to up the danger, basically going to give the team something to shoot at the entire time while they are on the inside. The skulls aren't just going to be limited to the end. The skulls that are going to be done, something that is done the entire time you are in the inside. However, for the purpose of the actual mechanic revolving around shooting the skulls, the only skulls that are going to count is when Calus stops and then spews all the skulls out of his mouth right at the very end of the inside phase. So that would be a revamped Calus for Pantheon. Now, ideally, these mechanics would be the same for his regular thing. I wouldn't expect them to make a fresh set of mechanics for Pantheon, only to then abandon them for a lesser version of the encounter. So, hey, yo, Bungie, hit me up if you need a new designer. I'll be more than happy to come work for you and implement these changes. Now, moving on to what would be the final week of my hypothetical Pantheon, the boss I have chosen to go with is the Witness. Now, there really wasn't any other choice for final boss. It was basically just a coin flip between the Witness and the Consecrated Mind, and I don't feel like I could sleep at night knowing that I chose the Consecrated Mind as the final boss of a Pantheon event over the Witness, so here we are. Now, I really don't have any problem with the core mechanics of the Witness. However, what I am going to change is two things. For one, the actual gathering of the Glyph Breaker buff, I feel, can be made a little bit more interesting whenever you are going to deposit it and break a glyph on the Witness's chest. That, and I think the damage phase for the Witness is relatively boring. So, for starters, you know how normally you have a player running around, first they break an arm, then they go get the resonance matching the shape on the arm, then they go back and stand in the resonance to shoot the arm. That's all going to remain the same. However, what we're going to do is we're going to add an additional player to the mix, and that additional player is going to, I don't know, for example, stand in the middle of the map, right on a plate or something. There's going to be an additional well of light that spawns at the spawn of the map, and what it's going to do is while standing in the well of light at spawn, whenever a player gathers a Glyph Breaker buff, the person who is standing in the well at spawn is going to be able to look at the Witness's chest and determine which one of the buttons needs to be broken with that particular instance of Glyph Breaker. So instead of the player getting the Glyph Breaker and then just picking one of the 6 buttons, whenever one is still there, they're going to get a specific button that they need to kill. Once again, this is just going to add an additional player to the mix and give players an order that they need to do things in, and obviously if they mess up the order that they shoot the buttons for the glyph breaker, the encounter is just going to end. And on top of it, instead of the witness's damage phase just being the chest opening and you have to just, shoot the chest, you're going to have to shoot the actual buttons on the witness's chest in the order of which that you broke them in the first place. Now, this is just going to mean there's not going to be any particular order like, oh, you need to deal X amount of damage to the button and then it breaks. There's going to be no damage locking. Instead, what's going to happen is that there is going to be a button that is glowing. You can shoot that button to deal damage, and then eventually, after like 5 seconds or so, I really forget how long the actual witness damage phase is, but once you shoot the button for long enough, it's going to move to another button and you have to shoot that button. So instead of in the footage you see, you're just dumping into his chest, you have to kind of move around and shoot a smaller target because the witness chest is a huge target, near impossible to miss if you are playing correctly. And that's it. Those are my picks for a hypothetical Pantheon. Week 1, Morgeth and Warpriest. Week 2, the Templar and Crota. Week 3, the Herald of Finality and Atheon's Time Conflux. Week 4, Calus and the Witness. Now, I really didn't take any time to talk about any hypothetical rewards. Just know that the weapons would have, kind of sort of updated perk pools. They'd all be converted to the new tiering system. Ideally, at the same time, the base versions of the raids would be converted to the new tiering system so that there was a reason to actually go back and play those, as well as the Leviathan returning at the same time that this Pantheon goes live. But I really do feel that it is in the best interest of the developers to bring back Pantheon in some capacity. I feel that it would be a good excuse at least to update all of the old raids to the new tiering system. I am of the opinion that it genuinely cannot be that complicated, but that is another discussion for another day. And besides that, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. This is my last video before Renegades is going to be coming out on December 2nd, which if I timed it correctly should be tomorrow as the time I'm uploading this video. And I do have a copy of Renegades to be giving away. If you haven't already, leave a like, comment, subscribe. All you have to do is comment and be subscribed to be considered eligible for the giveaway. I'll try to pick a winner within 48 hours of the time this video is going live, a day after Renegades is launched, just to, hopefully get this to somebody in a timely manner, because the last time I tried to give it away, it really didn't work out. And let me know what you think. I know I put a little bit of thought into it, thinking about what I would do with all the other vaulted raids, Spire, Eater, Crown, Scourge, what I would actually do with those, but decided to only go with Leviathan for the purpose of making this video. Do you agree with these picks? You think any of these mechanics would be interesting? Let me know in the comment section down below. And besides that, I hope each and every single one of you has a great day. I hope you enjoy Renegades tomorrow as much as I think we are all going to. And remember, you mean something to somebody out there. And until next time, take it easy now.